Ladies and gentlemen, our next panel, Powering Global Energy Demand. Please welcome our moderator, Sean Bennett, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Oil and Natural Gas, U.S. Department of Energy. He's joined by Greg Conlon, Chief Development Officer, KBR, Steve Connor, President and CEO, Siemens Energy Incorporated, USA, CFO, Siemens Global Power Generation Services, Peter Gibson, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Stellar Energy, and John Hopkins, Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer, NuScale Power.
I feel like we did something wrong with the light sign.
All right, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here on the panel. We've heard again, a great keynote here this morning and a lot of interesting panel discussions, and we're going to really continue on with energy as really the dominant topic here for this morning. So could each of you give us a little background on your company and where you operate in the U.S. as well as globally?
Yes, my name is John Hopkins. I'm CEO of NuScale. NuScale is a small modular reactor company, an advanced light water reactor currently going through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. My background, I was 10 years corporate officer with Fluor Corporation, which is a global engineering procurement construction company, and they are also our primary private investor in NuScale. Our other primary investor is the U.S. Department of Energy, U.S. government. Currently, we have a little over $800 million of cash invested in this product, and hopefully we'll be through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission this time next year.
Okay. So Greg Conlon, I'm the Chief Development Officer for Kellogg Brown & Root. We've got 35,000 people across the world in 40 countries, actually active in 70, but offices in 40. Very well known for oil and gas and LNG projects, of course, significant government services business, significant technology business, and a growing space business as well. So the touch points for us are very large. The US side of our business remains probably the biggest component of our business, with that office delivering mega projects all over the world. So the conversation today is very, very interesting for us.
Well, good morning. My name is Steve Connor. I'm the President and CEO of Siemens Energy, Inc. in the Americas. Most of you know Siemens, we're an international conglomerate and have about 380,000 employees worldwide. But I guess more importantly for this meeting, we have 50,000 US employees that account for about $24 billion in US revenue. So the US is our largest market by far. If you take a look at power, we actually have our world headquarters for power is in Houston, Texas. And the headquarters for all of power generation services worldwide is in Orlando, Florida. So the U.S., we consider the U.S. our home market, and really looking forward to today.
Good morning. Peter Gibson, CEO and Chairman of Stellar Energy. We've heard from some of the larger players at the table. I represent some of the smaller players. We are a privately held company. We've got 3 different platforms, one in improving the efficiency and performance of gas-fired turbines around the world. So deal a lot with Siemens and their products. That applies to the LNG sector as well. We have a platform in district energy solutions, turnkey delivery there. And also, we're one of the larger supplier of cooling for data centers. We have offices in Jacksonville, Florida, Hong Kong, Bangkok, and Abu Dhabi, and we have a pretty large footprint in the Middle East and North Africa regions.
Great. And, it's interesting, given the shale revolution, the United States has really rethought everything that we thought we knew about natural gas as a commodity. When I started my tenure in the oil and gas industry, it was domestic, it was North American, it was by pipe, and now we're seeing more exports. And given the variety of experts on the panel, energy in general, where do you see the investments moving forward? What's most attractive for energy projects today and in the future? What countries do you see as being the best markets to operate in?
If I want to kick that off, I'd say the 2 things that are fueling the drive for us is definitely gas. Gas is the fuel of the future for KBR. I know for some of the other panelists, slightly different focus. we're seeing the cutover in LNG fueling a huge amount of potential LNG investment for the next 3 or 4 years. So the 2023-2024 sort of event horizon for large projects is quite exciting. We'll be talking a little bit more about that at LNG 19 in China next week. The cheap gas point you made, Sean, is very well made, though. We're seeing that drive a whole raft of chemical reconfigurations, and particularly in Europe, Middle East and Africa, some very large opportunities emerging.
Yeah, I would, as I mentioned, I came out of Fluor Corporation, and when I did the due diligence on a small company called NuScale Advanced Small Modular Reactor, the investment hypothesis to our board was about, not about a quick return, it was about looking at energy requirements 2030, 2040. And coming out of the oil and gas business, who would in this room would have thought we'd be an LNG exporter today? And I mean, I grew up in an environment where, we had 55-mile-an-hour speed limits because we didn't have enough oil and gas. And part of that, what I'm seeing in the world today is that, and it gets back to the story everybody here has heard. How many people today in this world live with no electricity or little electricity? Produce in the fields that rot because they don't have refrigeration. The water issue is huge. We all know that now. I mean, it was mentioned in a panel before by General Cartwright about the energy requirements for clean water for desalinization. We're also seeing energy requirements for hydrogen production, process steam, et cetera. So the fact that we have now become, as a country, an exporter of LNG, I think the next wave that's coming is going to be a lot of the advanced technologies that General Cartwright and the CEO of Lightbridge commented on, Seth, which is the next wave of what we believe is the advanced small modular reactors on a global perspective, and to complement other energy sources. I'm not competing against oil and gas per se. In fact, if I had a competition in this country, you were blessed right now to have gas at $2 to $3 per million BTU. But outside this country, that is not the case. And I'll get into it later who we believe our competition is and how XM comes into being and why it's critically important for my company going forward in the international markets.
Yeah, I think, for Siemens, it's the nice part is we deal with both developed countries and developing countries, and I think the dynamics are a little bit different on both, but they're both quite unique. And on the nice part for a developing company, it's all about the whole energy cycle is evolving now. I mean, we're bringing renewables on the grid between solar, between wind, the whole transmission distribution kind of lines feeding one way now have to feed 2 ways, and what's happening there. And it's really taking this developed economy we have, going to electric cars, which, everybody's kind of the buzzword, but how do you actually feed the electricity? How do you get there? And how do you have a charging point more than, 2 of them every 100 miles with all the people who are going to own electric cars, right? So that's kind of on the developed countries. On the developing countries, it's actually, comes back to the old, availability, reliability, and security, and how do I get energy there? So I would, we have a number of projects. We have done close to $1 billion in deals with Exim Bank before, Saudi Arabia being one of our largest, Colombia, another one where we're really taking the technology and the innovation that we've been able to develop here in our energy hub in Charlotte and move that to other parts of the world. So when we decided to expand Charlotte about 10 years ago now, it was really to be able to utilize the technology, innovation, the R&D centers that we have here in the U.S. and the Exim Bank to really export our goods. And I think it's critically important for us and other companies to be able to do that. And it's not just the large scale. As both John and Peter have mentioned earlier, we actually partner with both of them as well on some of the technologies we do, the Dresser-Ran stuff as well. So I think for us, Exim Bank is a key player on how do we take our innovation and technology and really export that out to the world.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with my colleagues on stage. I really do believe that natural gas and the exporting of that in the form of LNG is a transition fuel which allows both developed countries and developing countries to be able to reach an integrated energy destination. And I speak to energy ministers around the world about it's fine to have plans, it's fine to have targets, but how do you functionally execute something to arrive at those destinations? And I think coupled with that energy security is such an issue globally. And so particularly for the US, to be able to influence and to be able to mediate and mitigate, from a security position, and to influence from a supply situation from LNG and the related industries, as the panelists have said to that, is so essential in today's world. And without that, and without XM's involvement in that, because there are so many projects that are energy related in developing countries that either the private sector, banks, they're not in a position to fund that. And without XM's involvement, there's a vacuum left there that there's, all too many nations, and some in particular, who are ready to step in and fill that gap, I think to the detriment of us here and from a global platform as well.
And that's a very good point. And, I started my career in the mining sector, jumped over to the oil and gas sector, and now I'm working for the Department of Energy, and, in my role as WSS Secretary of Office of Oil and Gas is authorizing LNG projects. And, in all of those sectors, the allocation of capital is really the main driver. And you have to allocate capital to show that you have a viable project, whether it's in mining, oil and gas, and so forth. So recognizing the importance and what I'm seeing from the LNG part, but recognizing that being able to export LNG is only one part of the equation, is how do you get people to utilize the energy, whether it's coal, whether it's nuclear, or whether it's LNG. What investments need to be made in order to maximize this opportunity that the United States has? Now, I'll open that up for the panel.
Sure, I'll start. I'll take a specific example. We're involved with the repowering of Iraq at the moment, and they've got a large fleet of semi-aged gas-fired turbines, and one of the things that our company is able to do is to increase both the production capacity and the efficiency of that, if you like, that installed base in a very short period of time relative to developing a new project. But again, that's a big apple for us to bite into as a successful but smaller privately held company. But the difference that makes, again, from a stability and an economic position in Iraq is absolutely huge, and it's immediate. And so to me, it's on the generation side. I think, as we've heard also, there's a transmission side as well. There's no point being able to generate efficient energy without being able to get it to the required off-takers, whether that's residential or industrial or whatever. And I think with that, the dynamic of global supply changes so quickly. And so to be involved in the infrastructure side of energy development and transmission is huge. And I think the quicker that can be deployed and integrated, the better it is. And the one other comment I'd make, and I think the Caribbean is a very good example of this, where you had I think a very well-known arbitrage between oil prices from oil-fired generation to what LNG can produce. That's a dynamic shift in an economy that can happen very, very rapidly. And that can, if you like, destabilize the unstable influences that are in that neck of the woods at the moment very, very quickly.
Yeah, I like what you said. It's one thing to produce power. It's another thing to actually be able to get it to the end user. And I think that's where we really look at kind of a huge infrastructure and where we deal with Exim Bank and how do we take these in really developing countries, right? Iraq being one of them, as you just talked about, and how do I create this energy source to get it to the ultimate end customer? And what I like to tell everybody about energy and electricity, regardless of how it's produced, be it coal, nuclear, wind, and getting it there. Without electricity, we've come to the point the world doesn't work, right? I mean, our healthcare machines don't work, the MRIs don't work, we can't, Lord knows we can't charge our iPhones anymore, so we wouldn't know how to function without that. And so energy and the whole stability is there, and you find that in all the nations that have kind of a stable energy flow, they seem to have a little bit better, I'll say, structure to them and dependability. So we work on that.
Yeah, I guess KBR's lens is perhaps slightly different as a project manager. So we're trying to take these ideas that the customers have to say, let's integrate a solution, let's deliver a major investment. And I guess the first point I'd make, Sean, really is at the scale of these developments, when you really do integrate them, the capital costs are so large now that the projects will not go forward without credible financing solutions. So, the first point I would make is, whether EXIM's available to the project or not, the project will need financing, and for the US EPCs like us, we're expected to bring a financial structured solution to the project. Now, the really interesting thing when you look at these big projects, with the degree of technology and embedded solutions, both from small, medium and large players, you're talking about 25 to 30% of these projects coming from a manufactured supply chain. So you're spending $10 billion and $3 billion of that will come from an industrialised country, whether that's Europe, whether it's America, whether it's somewhere else. And the real challenge for us as the US EPC is without that level playing field of being able to finance out of the US, we can't bring that supply chain to bear. And we know it will come, and we know it'll be supplied by an industrialised nation. So, that smart technology, it doesn't always have to be cheapest, it has to be competitive, and really, the US's challenge is it wants part of the action. These projects are coming, and the US economy wants to benefit from it.
Yeah, just one of the moderators before said he is somewhat baffled at the fact that the Overseas Private Investment Corp is getting so much attention, but yet we don't have a quorum for EXIM. I'm also the chairman of the board for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, or for the executive committee. The chamber is a strong advocate for EXIM and a strong advocate for OPIC. And that being said, though, if I look at my market and just help level set a little bit, when we talk about advanced small modular reactors, they're small in the States, they're 60 megawatt electric, below grade, seismically robust, extremely safe. In fact, I've been to Japan 4 times now post-Fukushima. Japan sees SMRs as the roadmap of the future because of energy security concerns. Japan imports majority of LNG now from Qatar and Australia, in some degree Russia, but they see SMRs. So here you got a country post-Fukushima with the belief, and when I went over there, they put me on TV because they're trying to get the general population. And you think about it, technologies advance. If you think your first automobile, whatever it was 20, 30 years ago, and what you have today, it's the Teslas and the Prius. The same thing as in nuclear. This is the new nuclear. From a financing perspective, if I look at my market within this country, it's aged fossil fuel plants that are not because of the politics, it's the economics that's forcing them to go out of business. Coal facilities that communities have grown around them. For me, I can come in and give you 720 megawatts electric. They're scalable units. I can put them into the existing infrastructure. And oh, by the way, for those communities, we're doing the analysis right now to how we cross-train those people to go from coal into what we're doing. If I look overseas, my competition is very simple. Seth at Lethbridge mentioned the fact that the state-owned enterprises, be it Russia or China particularly, use nuclear today as market penetrators. Their focus is the Arabian Peninsula, their focus is sub-Saharan Africa. They get in there, they're there for 80 years, and they provide the energy for those countries. It's inexcusable for me that we, as a US company, and we have the technology, we cannot cede that to those countries, because they're there for a long period of time. And these are countries that for me, most of the desire for me, I was at IHS 2 weeks ago, which is kind of the Davos of energy for the oil and gas chemical world. I signed a memorandum of understanding with the energy minister from Romania. So I have, although they're not legally binding, it shows a degree of emphasis at very senior levels in government and also within industry. I've got an MOU with Jordan, Romania, 2 in Canada currently, and we'll probably have another one. The focus generally is developing countries. So for me to compete against China and Russia, I need the capacity to some degree to help level that playing field with finance. They bring a total wraparound finance package to get these countries engaged. We have that opportunity to get a quorum in XM. And oh, by the way, as you know, OPIC is now restructured into IDFC. We need them as well to help us because those countries that OPIC is involved with for natural security in developing countries are the same countries that want us. To go through the rigor of the National or the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, countries understand this is the gold standard for safety. And they want us, but yet we've got to be able to figure out how we can assist them in financing these deals. For me to give you 720 megawatts, normally when people say, what's your levelized cost of electricity? I'll say, where are you talking about in the world? Because in the US it's one thing, and in Kazakhstan it could be something totally different. But the fact is, I can give you 720 megawatts in this country for less than probably around $3 to $3.1 billion. That's financeable. And the same thing as I go around the world, because a lot of it has to do with productivity rates and you know, who's going to build these. But we've got to get that quorum from XM.
Great, John, thank you. And Steve, you said something regarding technology, which I find very interesting because we're not talking about commodity, a physical commodity for technology. And Siemens, why has Siemens invested so heavily in the United States market to manufacture energy technologies to be exported globally to the foreign markets?
Well, one, I'd have to say we like it here. So, but
we love having you here.
but besides that, no, we actually think that the U.S. With the technology and from acquisitions we've made over the years, through Westinghouse, through Dresser-Rand, we really and our headquarters here in Houston, and our global service headquarters in Orlando, that we really believe this is the power hub of innovation for the world. And when we take a look at the amount of employees that we employ through our energy hub and what we do, I mean, just the U.S. operation alone, remember, would rank us about 125th, so the top 25 percentile in the Fortune 500 companies. So that's not talking about global, that's talking about just the U.S. business alone and what we do. And we've spent, I think, over the last 6-7 years, about $40 billion in the U.S. and on expansion, on acquisitions, et cetera. So I think we're here because we have, you have access to great R&D centers, you have access to great training, you have access to great universities, you have access to great people and educated people who can learn new trades. And so everything, you have stable governments, you have, besides the federal government, you have local and state authorities who kind of push for economies and offer things. So everything is stable. It's kind of a known commodity. Yes, we get into discussions of things that are changing a little bit, but we really believe that the innovation and the evolution of energy, which is happening now, big time, is actually going to come out of the U.S. And that's why we've headquartered here. That's why we're here, and this is why we plan on staying.
And that leads me to my next question for you. How has the availability of XM Bank financing kind of influenced those financial decisions?
I talk about Charlotte Energy Hub. We moved that here strictly because we believe that we'd be able to use XM Bank financing as we produced on a large scale out to the world. I mean, the energy markets isn't that you have you don't have manufacturing sites or the technology set up in every part of the world to do that. So for us, it's pretty unique. We can serve the world from here. We've done about $1 billion in deals with XM Bank. We did a $640 million deal in Saudi Arabia where we put 4,000 megawatts in there on engines that we produce out of Charlotte. Matter of fact, we're doing which is kind of a neat thing, we're doing our new HL class turbine is going to be Duke Duke is our customer on that, located in the Carolinas, and it's kind of neat because it's a turbine built by North Carolinians for North Carolina, for the people from North Carolina, and a customer in North Carolina, all the technology reigning there. So, but we take that then and we actually utilize that same technology, the same workforce, and we put it out to other parts of the world. And I think it's not just a matter of having Ex-Im Bank giving us a level playing field for doing a financing wrap that John talked about earlier, but it's kind of a matter of how do you build bridges with other countries to become kind of partners and where do they have. So it's also kind of national security and national policy, we believe as well. The more we can get our products and innovation around the world and have people utilizing it for society, the better we will be. And that's kind of the goal that we're trying to push here.
Oh, that's very interesting. And really for John, Peter, and Greg, can you provide some historical examples how you have used Ex-Im Bank in the past to win some of these global projects with U.S. technologies?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, our probably largest experience was a multi-billion-dollar deal that we put together for a large Middle Eastern chemical complex. And, my immediate sort of challenge to the audience is, there are more projects like that being scoped as we speak. And the vehicle's not available to us at the moment to do what we did in the past. Now, we've been successful in securing the role as the EPC program manager on a number of those developments, and we're having to work alternative solutions because Ex-Im's not available at the scale that we've done in the past. There is one point I'd like to pick up on between Steve and John, and one of the great advantages the US has is we have some of the best engineering minds, project delivery minds in the world. And not only do we have excellent technology products, but the integration of those is a real key. And I think, John, you talked about modularisation. One of the big things we're seeing and we're bringing to these emerging projects is the idea of extended modularisation to what we're calling EPF, engineered, procured, fabricated major structures. It actually de-risks the project because there's less construction. You're taking away the construction overrun risk. That big manufactured component, if you like, intelligent integrated component, the US is remarkably well placed to provide those. And in a lot of ways, we can actually make the playing field in America's favour. The trick is when we embed those in these large projects, we need the financing available. And so I think it's more than just the components, it's putting the whole solution together. And we're remarkably well placed, and we've got the opportunities right now to offer those.
Yeah, I was just going to step in there because using both of those two examples, probably unknown to Steve, on that particular project in Saudi Arabia where Siemens supplied 4 gigawatts of power, we came in and supplied, I think, 650 megawatts of additional augmentation and improvement to that. It was actually an IPP, so they were able to win that concession in Saudi Arabia. And we did it because our solutions are modularized, so that's what we did. So if you look at the flow-on benefit from Ex-Im and the integrated nature that has impacting the US economy, as a result, we've doubled our manufacturing facilities in the last 3 years. And what gets me up in the morning and drives me is the fact that the example, the technology, the expertise, the experience that's here in the US can be financed and distributed around the world to close that gap. I'm a believer that everyone in the world needs access to efficient energy, to water, to healthcare. That may stem from my New Zealand upbringing, but Ex-Im is if you like, a way to execute that and to deliver that and facilitate around the world. And I couldn't think of a better, more responsible, more strategic facilitator to do that. And it's great without any collaboration here that this is a natural example of how Ex-Im is supposed to work and does work, and I think it does it very, very effectively.
I just hear arguments why we shouldn't have Ex-Im. It's corporate welfare, it's can't pick winners and losers, and my answer is bullocks. I say Without it, we lose jobs. The U.S. Commerce says for every $1 billion of export, that's 5,000 jobs in this country. For me, I'm big on U.S. supply chain, and for having 2 plants, if I ship overseas, that's equates to 12,000 jobs. The EXIM, as we all know here, they're not a tax burden to the taxpayer. They don't ask for subsidies. In fact, they give money back to Treasury. And then it gets into the jobs and the need for emerging industries and small business and mid-sized business, which is a big part of the U.S. Chamber, are all saying we need to have this capacity.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, without EXIM funding, at what disadvantage does this put U.S. in trying to gain this market share in the global economy? I mean, that's a very important part because there are small windows in the energy sector. You kind of have to follow the tranches of investments, and we're in the middle of one of those right now. And trying to get market share in the global economy, how does EXIM play in that role? We'll start at the end.
Sure. Well, quite simply for us, without EXIM's involvement, without an open bank in the form of EXIM, our landscape changes dramatically. Our Middle East and Sub-Sahara business is compromised. The cycle it takes from developing a project to delivering it and putting everything in place is maybe doubled or tripled in size in terms of trying to put a finance deal together. We'd look to partner with other entities, sitting on the platform with me, but it's a completely different landscape. And we've seen it in the Middle East where, whether it's a China or a Russia or someone else, with, in my honest opinion, inferior technology with an inferior solution steps into that gap. And so the ultimate economy or the ultimate client gets a solution. It's not the best solution, but it completely excludes, if you like, the US economy and the influence that's associated with that. So it's a dramatically different landscape.
Yeah, I think for, in a true sense, if you really had a true free economy, then there would be the question. But other developed nations actually support their export business, and that's just a fact of reality. And so we need to have the EXIM Bank to make sure that the United States also has kind of equal footing or fair footing to put financing deals together as we go out and serve the world. And I think the other thing the EXIM Bank does, it actually lends credibility to projects, significant credibility. And I don't know if it's a matter of human nature, but as soon as we have found with the past, as soon as you would have EXIM Bank stand in with a commitment, other lenders and financiers would quickly follow. It's kind of that, you need that first one to get that ball rolling and the momentum rolling, especially as you're going out and pioneering in kind of new developing nations. And I would agree with John. I mean, the EXIM Bank is actually a moneymaker. It's not a drain. This isn't let's just go spend a lot of money and you never get it back, right? It's how do I create how do I create the ability to have a workforce with innovation in the United States, to export my products abroad, to create better partnering abroad with the people and societies and what we're doing, and how do I wrap that all in a financing package which actually helps our security? I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. We look forward to the full reestablishment, but for the U.S. to compete along with other developed nations, it's a must.
Yeah, and I think, Steve, I'm in a similar position. We will find financing solutions for our projects, and there's some very strong industrialised nations out around the planet who will step into that gap. You can challenge, whether their quality is as good as what you get from the US, but the simple reality is right now the playing field isn't level without EXIM in place. We can't leverage the US supply chain into these projects, and inevitably the investment will flow somewhere else. So I don't see it so much a case of how much would it help. I think the reality for us is we see the funds being allocated to where the financing will be available, and it's a great shame because the US has got an awful lot of potential and certainly can be competitive. So it's purely a case of getting the capability in line. And I think your point's really well made, Steve, that the confidence that comes with involving XM in a project is the big differentiator we see. You know, we would really like that back and available to us because our customers respond very, very well to the assurity, the confidence, just the reputation that comes with XM.
I don't think I have anything to add after these gentlemen pretty much hit all the salient points, so.
Yes, no. It's great, John. And now we'll kind of just go through the panel for some individual questions. And Peter, I'll start with you. You know, you mentioned earlier you're a small business and you're competing on a global stage. So, you know, how has the XM enabled Stellar Energy as a small business to compete in that global marketplace?
Yeah, I think it's enabled us to really punch above our weight. As we've said, I've got just a phenomenal bunch of people that work with me, very talented, very experienced, but it would be just hard for us to the progress we could make would be a little stifled without XM's involvement. But XM involvement has done a couple of things. I think the points that Steve and everyone else is making, it gives us credibility. For our technology to have been vetted and certified and given the thumbs up by XM to the extent that they would want to then put it in a finance solution and a package does give credibility to us. Appropriate credibility, but it does give credibility for us. And so we're able to leverage that significantly. And if you think about, you know, let's go back to an LNG situation. We've just been involved in helping commission Cheniere's latest train at Corpus Christi, and our technology there has enabled them out of the existing generation assets that they've got there, about another 8 or 10% more production out of those same assets. So for them, that's about another 1 million tonnes of liquid a year. But that then goes into an export situation where there's going to be industry associated with that energy source, which we're also involved with, and everyone sitting around this table is involved with in some form or of another. What we've been able to take XM commitment and backing of us to do is then to be able to put even more developed finance solutions, particularly in Southeast Asia, to where now our technology is very credible, it's certified, but we can now deliver it over a period of time. And so it's just enabled us to grow to our full potential and in a way that's sustainable and helps get to an appropriate integrated solution at the end of the day.
Thank you. That's a great answer. And John, you're not getting off too easy. You didn't answer the last question, so I have one specifically for you. You know, how would viable financing options from XM benefit NuScale in foreign countries?
It allows us to compete. When I mentioned I was at IHS here a couple of weeks ago, and I had the opportunity to meet with energy ministers from Czech Republic, Poland, Romania, and one question they ask is, you know, is there a capacity within the U.S.? We know there is, or we are going to have an opportunity to see financing coming like we're being offered by Russia and China and others. And for me, as I stated, you know, with the nuclear regulatory rigor to go through for the safeguards and to see that less safe technologies could be offered and countries will accept that because they bring financing and we can't, we've got to change that.
Okay. No, thank you. And Greg, moving on to you. Over the decades, you know, XM has primarily financing's been utilized for U.S. exporters of manufactured goods. Both major manufacturers, including GE, Boeing, Caterpillar, and so forth, and medium and small businesses. Is XM financing also important for U.S. EPC firms?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, US EPC firms are, you know, as good as anyone around the globe. We bid these multi-billion-dollar projects, you know, regularly. I mean, you know, we would have a number of opportunities at that scale right now, and you know, the playing field isn't level at the moment. We can't bring the US capability to bear in those projects. The simple reality is, you know, we will solve it. But when you talk about these projects, I'll say it again, you know, tens of billions of dollars, and 20 or 30% of those projects could be sourced through the US supply chain, both small, medium and large. It's a huge opportunity that's sitting there now that we're not able to leverage. So I guess, for us, we're missing, an ace in the pack. We're trying to win the card game, and we're missing one of the cards.
Right. And yeah, thank you very much. And you mentioned supply chain. And moving back to you, Steve, why is XM important to Siemens US and its supply chain in order to facilitate energy and infrastructure projects around the world?
I think Greg just hit it. For us, it's about the 50,000 employees that we have. It's about the investment we've put here. 30%, I would agree, comes to the manufacturing. I would look that it's even more. It's probably 50, 60% because I have partnerships with people that are used to using our technology, working as I'm in developed nations, and I would want to, and I do continue utilizing them as I go into other areas where I'm using XM financing. It's just they're familiar with the product, they're familiar with the technology, all the synergies are in place. The digitalization side communicates well, and it comes down to do you have the best technology, to what John was saying, and are you able to actually serve your customer with it? It doesn't always come down to price level. Then it comes down to, again, as I say, availability, reliability, security, et cetera. And as long as you have that's the real driver that's going to push that. And XM Bank will allow us to really have the best product, the best solution forward, not only Siemens, but to all our partners out there. And it'll keep I would call it the less qualified person from getting a step up just because of a financing deal.
Oh, thank you. And running out of time, I do have one final question. Working in Australia years ago, there's something that I have to ask between our New Zealand friends and our Australian friends. Which country is really superior at rugby?
I wouldn't like to get in the middle of that one, but
Neither would I.
all I can say is that we're the fiercest of competitors when we're playing against each other. But if anyone comes against either country, we're the closest of companions.
No, I think
How
it's
do you
very
beat
good.
that answer? Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for the panel. Thank you very much. This is great. Thanks.